Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you would never question their intentions? Well, that was me with my best friend. We've been through everything together: celebrations, heartbreaks, all of life's ups and downs. But one night, as I was cooking dinner for her and my husband when she came visiting, something happened that shattered that trust forever. At that moment, I realized I didn't know her at all. And what came next? I don't think you would ever trust again after hearing this. Trust is like glass. One small crack and it all breaks. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. My husband, my best friend Joy, and I were sitting together, laughing and talking like old times. I was in the kitchen preparing a meal, while they relaxed in the living room watching a movie. It was a kind of cozy, perfect night that made me feel like everything was exactly where it should be. I wanted this night to feel special, not just because of the food or the company, but because I missed the closeness I used to have with Joy. We hadn't been as close lately, and I was excited to remind her that she was still like family to me, that nothing could change that. But that was before everything shattered. As I stepped out of the kitchen for just a moment, something strange happened. When I returned, I saw her leaving the kitchen, her face looking different. She looked pale, almost like she was hiding something. She quickly made an excuse, saying she had to go suddenly. Her voice sounded shaky, and she wouldn't look me in the eye. I found it odd, but I brushed it off. This was Joy after all, my best friend. She knew me better than anyone, and I trusted her completely. Then our housekeeper, Chike, walked up to me. He looked worried, his face serious as he leaned in close. In a quiet, almost hesitant voice, he said, "Madam, your friend put something inside the food where you dey cook." My heart skipped. Put something inside the food? I stared at him, not sure I heard him right. I tried to tell myself that maybe he was mistaken or that he hadn't really seen what he thought he did. But the look on his face and that strange expression Joy had when she left the kitchen, it didn't sit right with me. When I told my husband, he brushed it off, laughing at how ridiculous it sounded. Joy wouldn't do something like that, he said, shaking his head. But seeing the worry on my face, he turned to her calmly and asked, "Taste it then?" Her face went white. Her hand shook as she reached for the spoon. In that moment, I knew this wasn't about friendship anymore. It was about survival. Let's go back to where it all began. Joy and I met on our first day of university. We were both nervous, young, and unsure about everything. She had this bright, contagious smile, and we clicked instantly. We were like sisters. From that very first conversation, we shared everything: late night talks, exam stress, family drama, and all. It felt like she was part of my life in every way that mattered. I remember staying up all night studying together, making promises about our futures. Sisters for life, we used to say, and I believed it with all my heart. Joy wasn't just my friend, she was my family. Whenever I felt down, she was the one who would pull me back up. And whenever she struggled, I did my best to do the same for her. During those long university nights, we talked about our dreams, the lives we wanted to build, and the people we hoped to become. We imagined the kind of weddings we would have someday, the homes we would create, and even the names we'd give our future children. We didn't have much back then, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. After graduation, life started moving faster. I was fortunate to get a good job, which eventually led me to meet the man I would marry. Joy was right there through it all, cheering me on, telling me how happy she was for me. When I got engaged, she was the first person I called, and I could feel her excitement as she helped me plan every detail. She was like a sister to me, and I trusted her more than anyone. Looking back now, I can see small things I missed at the time. Sometimes, when I share good news, her smile would falter for just a moment, or she would laugh a little too quickly, like she was forcing herself to be happy for me. But I brushed it off, telling myself that she was just tired of going through her own challenges. Life takes us in different directions. After the wedding, my life took a new rhythm. My husband and I bought a beautiful home, and my career was moving forward. I felt like everything was falling into place. But for Joy, things were different. She lost her job, and her relationship ended badly. I could see the stress in her eyes whenever we met. She was quieter, less cheerful, and sometimes seemed almost distant. But I told myself it was just a phase. She was still Joy. my best friend, and she would bounce back. Over time, though, I noticed little things, comments here and there that felt off. She would say things like, some people just have all the luck, or you really got everything, didn't you? I laughed it off, thinking she was just venting, but deep down, it felt strange. The warmth between us wasn't the same, and I could feel her pulling away. One evening, wanting to reconnect, I decided to invite her over for dinner. I wanted us to have a night where we could laugh, reminisce, and feel close again. I spent the entire afternoon preparing her favorite meal, hoping it would remind her of how much she meant to me. My husband and I were genuinely excited to have her over, thinking this dinner would rekindle the friendship we once had. When Joy arrived, she looked different, more reserved, almost as though she was carrying a burden she didn't want to share. After a while, I needed to step out of the kitchen to use the bathroom. I left the food simmering on the stove, knowing I would only be gone for a few moments. When I returned, I saw Joy leaving the kitchen, her face looking strange, pale, almost guilty. She avoided my gaze, mumbling, I have to go. Something just came up. Her voice was shaky, and she didn't wait for me to respond before she quickly walked out. It struck me as odd, but I told myself that maybe she was just stressed. This was Joy after all, my best friend. Why would I think anything was wrong? Just as I turned back to the kitchen, Chike, our housekeeper, approached me. He's been with my family for years, someone I trusted like a family member. When he looked at me with worry in his eyes, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. Madam, he said quietly, glancing towards the door where Joy had just left. Your friend put something inside the food where they cook. At first, I couldn't process his words. I stared at him, trying to make sense of what he had just said. Are you sure, Chike? I asked, barely able to steady my voice. This couldn't be real. It didn't make sense. Joy would never. Or would she? Chike nodded firmly. Yes, madam. I see her with my own eyes. She poured something inside before she waka comot. I looked at the pot on the stove, the food I had made with love. My mind was racing, filled with disbelief and fear. Could Joy, the person I trusted more than anyone, have done something so horrible? My stomach turned, but I tried to stay calm, telling myself that maybe it was a mistake. But that look on her face kept replaying in my mind. My husband walked into the kitchen, noting the look on my face. What's wrong? He asked, concern written across his face. I hesitated, not wanting to believe what I had just heard, but I couldn't keep it to myself. Chike said Joy put something in the food. I whispered, my voice shaking. He raised his eyebrow in disbelief, then let out a small laugh. That's impossible, he said, shaking his head. Joy would never do something like that. She's practically family. But I couldn't shake off the feeling. My mind kept replaying the scene. Joy's pale face, her hurried excuse to leave, Chike's worried expression. I felt stunned, caught between my love for my best friend and the disturbing thoughts that maybe, just maybe, she had done something terrible. Finally, my husband saw the worry in my eyes and placed a hand on my shoulder. All right, he said gently, trying to reassure me. Let's just check, okay? And then, as if on cue, we heard footsteps coming down the hall. Joy had returned. She looked surprised to see us both in the kitchen, and for a moment, her face flashed with something that looked almost like fear. Joy, my husband said with a calm smile, though I could see a hint of suspicion in his eyes. We were just about to eat. Why don't you taste the food? Her face went pale, and she froze, her eyes darting between us. She hesitated, her hands starting to tremble. I'm not feeling well, she stammered, forcing a weak laugh. She stayed silent. Maybe it's best if you don't feel well, Joy, my husband said, his tone firm. Just a taste, to put our minds at ease. I'm sure you understand. The room was so silent that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I watched her closely, every part of me hoping she would laugh, that she would take the spoon and prove me wrong. But instead, her face twisted, the pain and fear she'd been trying to hide. Her hands shook as she reached for the spoon. Just as she was about to take a bite, she stopped, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't mean to, she whispered, her voice breaking. She let the spoon fall, covering her face with her hands. It's just not fair. You have everything, a good job, a husband who loves you, a beautiful home, and me? I'm stuck. I don't have anything. And I thought maybe if I could take something from you, I'll feel better. Her words were like a slap to the face. This was my best friend, the person I would trust with everything standing here. admitting that she would try to harm me out of jealousy. My heart twisted in ways I couldn't describe. Each of her words hits me like a punch. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what Joy was admitting to me. This was the person I had shared so much with, the one I trusted more than anyone. And here she was saying that her jealousy had led her to do the unthinkable. I could barely speak. My throat felt tight and my mind was racing. All those years, the memories, the secrets we shared, it felt like they were unraveling in front of me, tainted by this revelation. My husband took a step forward, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. You thought if you hurt us, you would feel better about yourself? His voice was cold, sharper than I'd ever heard before. This isn't about jealousy, Joy. You crossed the line you can't uncross. Joy sank to her knees, sobbing, her face twisted with regret. Please, she begged, looking up at us with desperate eyes. I wasn't going to go through with it. I just didn't know what else to do. I've been so unhappy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Please, please believe me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that this was just a mistake, a moment of weakness that had gone too far. But I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut, the sense of betrayal that had settled deep in my bones. I had trusted her completely, and now that trust was shattered beyond repair. My husband reached for his phone, his expression hard as he dialed the authorities. Joy pleas grew louder, her hands clasped together as she begged us not to report her. Please don't call them. I'm so sorry. I wasn't in my right mind. It was a moment of weakness. Please just give me a chance to make it right. I looked at her, the desperation in her eyes, the regret on her face, but all I could feel was a hollow ache, an emptiness that came from realizing that the person I thought would always be by my side had become someone I barely recognized. The authority arrived quickly, their presence filling the room with a sense of finality. She looked back at us one last time, her face full of sorrow, before she was led out of the house. In the days that followed, her words haunted me. I replayed that night over and over in my mind, searching for signs I might have missed, clues that could have warned me of what was coming. But all I saw was the friend I had loved, the person who had been my confidant, my sister in spirit and in heart. And it hurt in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. Joy was gone from my life, and with her went the piece of me that I knew I would never get back. The betrayal left a scar, a reminder that sometimes the people we trust are the ones who can hurt us in ways we never see coming. Some people hide their true intentions behind a smile, behind years of friendship and loyalty, and sometimes it takes a single moment to see them for who they really are. Now, what would you do if the person you trusted most became the person you feared the most? The end.